Welcome everyone. I'm so glad that you all could join us. It's my great pleasure to introduce Diane Burko this evening. So Diane has been visually exploring landscapes and geological features her entire career. Her interest in climate change actually stemmed from a 2006 exhibition of her work at the Michener, and I love telling the story, Diane, where she saw the exhibition included a painting of the French Alps that she did in the 1970s, and while leading a tour through the exhibition, she wondered, is there still snow there 30 years later? And so she began to redirect her practice, situating at the intersection of art, science, and the environment, focusing on climate change. So she first began by investigating glacial melt and sea level rise, and you can see some examples of that in the exhibition Rising Tides, Contemporary Art and the Ecology of Water. And she is now looking also at our oceans and coral reef ecosystems, as well as more recent issues of extreme temperatures and forest fires and the spread of COVID-19. Diane has traveled and exhibited around the globe. So as I mentioned, her work is featured in the Michener's current exhibition, Rising Tides, Contemporary Art and the Ecology of Water, which is open until January 10th. Her work is also included in Never Done, 100 Years of Women in Politics and Beyond, that's currently on view at the Tang Museum in Saratoga Springs, New York. And she is also preparing for a solo exhibition at the American University Museum that will open in late August of 2021. So I wish we could all be in her studio in person right now, because it's a fabulous space, but we'll make do with her virtual presentation that she's prepared today. So take it away, Diane.
Okay, I will. Thank you for that lovely introduction. And thank you for actually having me do what I usually don't do, talk only about my practice and not so much about the issues, but of course they'll creep into my practice when I'm talking to you. Laura and I talked about what to do, and we've had, Laura, again, thank you so much for Rising Tides and your curatorial leadership. It's been wonderful. And I do hope people will get a chance to see the show. So I gather the Michener is still open?
We are still open. So Bucks County has not issued or not recommended closures like Philadelphia has for Philadelphia Museum.
The only museum that people in the area can go to. They better.
Yeah, it's a nice day trip if you're looking to have a little getaway out to Doylestown.
So when we discussed how to do this, originally we were hoping that Laura and I would be in my studio together, but that hasn't worked out. And I've decided to bring you into not just the studio I'm in now in Center City, Juniper Street, but to give you an overview of all my studios. As a lot of you know, I've been around for a while and I've been a painter for more than 40 years. And it was kind of fun for me to do a little bit of a memory lane kind of thing. And I think some of you might enjoy that as well. So we are really starting way back at the beginning. This was my first studio right after I graduated from the University of Pennsylvania. And yes, I once had long hair. So I'm going to just give you these kind of glimpses into the artist studio and interject talking about my practice, of course. And at this point in time, it's painting, it's oil painting. And when I found this slide, I realized, how could I explain it? Well, it's black and white, but the painting was blue and white. And the reason it was blue and white is because before that painting, I was doing paintings like this. They were about aerial views of Pennsylvania farms, as a matter of fact. And they were kind of loud. They were orange and green and full of color. And after I did those for a few years, I realized I needed a change. I needed to change my palette completely. I'm not what you call a signature artist. I don't have a signature style. I'm someone who needs to be stimulated by a challenge. And if I figured everything out aesthetically, and I don't want to keep painting the same thing. So after doing those aerial paintings in those colors, I started looking at the mountains that were in the background and wanted to know if I could paint them. So I challenged myself to paint them. And this is one of the first paintings of that period. And here was a show that happened a little bit after that. And it's kind of a nice segue because I was in Tempe, Arizona, I saw the Grand Canyon, and that led to another body of work. And this, again, going back to process, here's a whole other media that I worked with probably, I would say for about 3 or 4 years. The first paintings, I did paintings of the Grand Canyon. And again, serendipitously, and I think, this is to share with artists, the Philadelphia Museum of Art was having a exhibition of works on paper. And I was thinking, well, I want to be in that exhibit, but I really hadn't done many works on paper at that point. And I had a block of watercolor paper, and I decided to start making some watercolors. Well, that didn't work out too well. I'm not a watercolor painter, but I had some colored pencils, and one thing led to another. And so I started making these 60, at this point, I didn't have large paper then, but I got it. And I did a series of 40 by 60 drawings that went on for quite a while. And in the background is a very bad install shot at PAFA when they first still had their Morris gallery. And here's an example of one of those paintings drawings that's a little bit better in terms of reproduction. So here we are in the 80s. I've gone from oil painting. There was acrylic for a while, and then it went to colored pencil. But there you go. That's another studio. Oh, I forgot to label where that's from. That is a studio that I had on Arch Street. Marion Locks, who was my dealer at the time. No, actually, that was still, I take that back. That was still West Philadelphia. There's the Arch Street one. I did title it. So going back to that, I had gone on a road trip all along the coast of California. And these are some of the paintings that I was playing with and studies that I was doing then. I wanted to make bigger work, and I didn't have a big studio. This was the 3rd floor of a West Philadelphia, home. And Marion had just gotten this space on Arch Street on the 200 block, or actually even it was east of the 200 block. And she said, she had a gallery there, but she had closed the gallery. And said, the space is there. If you want to use it, why don't you? And so I did. And that's in that space in 1985. That space was fantastic. The only thing Marion forgot to tell me is that it had no heat. So by November, it was really cold. And I went looking for another space. And this is the space I found. This was in a building that was just developed by Miles and Generalis. Some of you people might know them. And here we are, 1987. And trying to remember now. Yes, I hadn't gone to Giverny yet, but I was looking at a lot of images of Manport and of the coast, the Brittany coast, the Normandy coast. And I was applying already for a residency in Giverny. It was the first year. And here's an example, again, for the artists out there. I didn't get it. I was so disappointed. I just felt I had to get it, but it didn't work. I sent slides in and I didn't get it. But I really wanted it. And what I found out, actually, there was an artist that got it and I couldn't understand why she got it. I didn't really think she was that great of an artist. Well, this was an interesting kind of insight into the art world. Apparently, this was sponsored, I should say, by the Lila Atchison Wallace Foundation, Reader's Digest. And she owned Reader's Digest at the time. And they asked for slides. And apparently that's all they saw. Well, the next year they did it again. And they didn't ask for just slides. You had to give them slides. And then this was a very rich foundation. They actually, when they selected the finalists, they had another international jury and they paid to have our work shipped to Reader's Digest in New York. For an actual view. They paid for everything. And I got in that time. So there you go. Sometimes slides aren't good enough, or they make your work not look good enough. Or on the other hand, they can make your work look much better. In terms of process, I think what you see in the studio shot is a projector. And at that point in time, that was my modus operandi. I always said to my students, my drawing students, that I knew how to draw, but I'm kind of an impatient person, and it would take too long to keep drawing all these big images when it was so much easier for me to project them. And also, by projecting them, I could figure out what size they would be. So the projector for me was kind of like a drawing tool. It would, I could move it in, I could move it out, and say, oh yes, that should be an 84 by 60, or maybe that should be a square. And I could literally keep playing around with the scale just by projecting without drawing or painting or anything until I came up with the right solution. So that's my 7th Street studio. I'll tell you where this was exactly. 7th Street and Christian. Everyone might know where John's Water Ice is. I was right across the street. It is basically it was a high school. It was a Catholic girls' school. So I do know how to draw. And quickly, remember I told you I applied for the Giverny thing, and it was a 6-month residency. I always say it was like dying and going to artist heaven. This was really an incredible experience for me. Well, I had a projector. I think I did have a projector, but this is drawn on. But what I basically did is I gridded it up. And this was a large painting. I think it was 96 by something. And again, it's another example of serendipity. I had a studio there were 3 artists on this residency. And like I said, it was incredible. I had a Peugeot Cinq, $1,500 a month, a French easel, an apartment, everything right on the premises. But the studio was small. So I was making paintings en plein air, but I wanted to make something larger. And I think I did bring large canvas with me, but I couldn't figure out, I couldn't stretch it. So I asked the menuisier, that's French for carpenters, if they had a piece of board for me, and they brought this up. I stapled it on, and I remember an artist came to visit me from New York. Actually, all my New York artist friends came to visit me because I was in Giverny. And one of them, I was complaining. I said, once I finish this, what am I going to do? And she said, well, you could turn it on the other side. And I swear I didn't think of that until she said that, Lila Katzen. So I did turn it on the other side, and I made 2 large paintings, and this was sort of the way I was doing it. But as I said, I was painting outside. I am a landscape painter, and actually, I know people think I use photographs. I do, but I also do some en plein air work. And there's the ultimate en plein air, my homage to Mr. Monet, who I must admit was not my favorite artist at the time, but I learned a great deal. I love the French Impressionists and that school, but I really learned to appreciate Claude Monet much more living there, and also following his campagnes. What I did, I spent 6 months, as I said, and I traveled all through France. I never left. Well, I did once to go to Switzerland to take my daughter for lunch. But aside from that, I literally spent all my time traveling through France, and I traced Monet's travels. And what I give him credit for is he really knew to find the right spots. He had an incredible eye, and he was wonderful that way. This is a painting, again, to show you process. And this was done after I came back. It's an 84 by 60. But what I think you see here, again, I was projecting, it came from a photograph, but I was there for 6 months, and we had a key to the garden, and we would get there before and after all, the tourists were there. So I had a lot of wonderful time and experience with this intimate landscape. And so, one's experience is, my experience with the landscape is not just being there at the moment, it's experiential and it's cumulative. And this is an example of, taking that and making it into this painting, which I have to say is one of my favorites, one of my favorite paintings. I had another residency, and that was in Bellagio, another incredible experience. There, I was with about 17 other scholars, and I mean it. They were from the Max Planck Institute. They were from all over, writing books, poets, etc. And I was the artist. And I had a studio in what we called La Casa Rosa, which was at the bottom of the hill. Well, it's more than a hill. This is Bellagio. So maybe you seem to know, Laura, exactly where that is, right? Have you been there? Yeah. Well, it's up on a hill, and it's an incredible estate, and it literally looks over at Lake Lecco and Lake Como. But this little house is at the bottom on Lake Lecco. So that's where my studio was, and I would go out every day and paint, and then bring studies in. A little different from this experience. I know we're skipping a few years here, but I don't want to go on forever. But again, it's another process kind of thing that I thought you would be interested in. I got this commission to do a mural for the Marriott. It's still there, although I don't like to visit it because it's never lit too well. And it was quite large. I think it was about 16 by 34 feet. And so I needed a scaffold. I always thank Jane Golden. I called her and asked her, where could I get a scaffold? And she said, I might have some extra ones. And this was really loaned to me by Jane. Well, here I am, an artist that projects images, okay? Well, this was an image of the Wissahickon. And how do I project something that big? I mean, that was a real challenge. And you might see the string, on either side of me. What I did is I divided this huge amount of canvas into quadrants, vertical, and then also horizontal. And when I did that, each one was basically the proportion of a slide. And then my dear husband, Richard, created what we called a slide ladder that moved. And we had one projector at one level and one projector at another. So that was basically the way I did it. And there you see me, painting. I did that for about 2 or 3 years. It was a wonderful challenge. I would never do it again. But as I said, there it is, still there. Not a great reproduction, but you can always go visit it. And actually the painting on the bottom is the one I was painting. About that time, let's see, this was 96, 97. Yeah, so I had rented out my studio while I had been in, I had a huge space. I didn't really, well, I showed you that picture. Let me go back. I should tell you, this is about, I think, 8,000 square feet. It was huge. It was in a building on 13th Street, which is now a loft building, but it wasn't when I was there. And I remember calling Alex and saying, you should buy this building. And he did buy the one across the street. So it was sort of an abandoned building, but it was being rented. And we totally created the space. We built a drywall for that and another drywall for the ones that were above, because if you look, there was also, you see this strip above, which was 7 feet by 96 feet and 7 feet by 95 feet. It goes around the whole space. It's a frieze. So indeed, I needed a great deal of space. So while I rented that space, I sublet my studio. And after doing that project, I went, actually, I don't think I have a studio install. I was in a building on Broad Street that now is where a restaurant is. I'm forgetting the name of it. So I didn't want to go back to that space anymore. I started looking for a new space. a bigger space. And I found it. And this is my Mountain Street studio, which Mountain Street between Tasker and Mars, between 9th and 10th. And it was wonderful. I think the building was 35 by 50. And Linda Brenner, who some of you might know, rented the first floor. I wanted to buy the building with her, but she said, no, I'm just going to rent. So she had the first floor, but I had a garage. So hers was like the second, 2/3 of it, and 1/3 was the garage. And I had the whole top floor. And there you see the same kind of system that was developed with my husband, actually, of this peg system. And it just keeps growing and getting more complex as time went on. And this is a painting. If it's 2002, I was already doing my volcano series. And yes, the Michener actually has one of those paintings in their collection. And this is a painting I think was from Iceland, right? Now we move to the present. See, that wasn't too slow, right, Laura? Okay, you never knew about all those other
things. No, this is great. I didn't know about this Marriott mural. I'll have to check that out.
As far as I know, I haven't been there lately. So here we are. I was in that Mountain Street studio for a number of years and I loved it. And we were living off of Rittenhouse Square, which was wonderful, except that there was no parking. So I kept always having to find parking on the street. And I started really complaining because I come home late at night sometimes. It's very hard to find parking. And Richard said, well, you know, why do you need to have your studio away and your parking? Let's look for a building where everything is in one. And his phrase, which I love, was that way you can wear your slippers and go downstairs and see what you did. And that's exactly what I do now, because this studio, as Laura knows, is in the first floor of our home. And yeah, when I pick up the paper every morning, I usually go into my studio first and to have a look and think, and then I go get the paper and get my coffee. So here we are, and this is 2009, right before my Politics of Snow show that some people know. And we're gonna just zip along. And you can see I'm in my climate change mode by now. And I thought this would be appreciated again by Laura, because she picked one of these to be in the exhibition. And the other one is at the Fiddler Club now, in storage, waiting to be hung. And all of that work this was sort of the end of my glacier period. And thanks to Andrea Packard, I had this exhibition out in Arkansas with a beautiful catalog, which might be available at the Michener, I don't know, but I think it's also.
I believe it is. I believe it is.
I think it is. And here's one install shot from that exhibition. And we're moving right along. This, I love the way they titled this because it's exactly what it was. It was Endangered from Glaciers to Reefs. When I had agreed to have this show at the National Academy of Sciences, it was just going to be about glaciers. But then J.D. Talasak and Alana Quinn, the curator, said, well, aren't you going to be going? They knew I was going to American Samoa, of all places. And they suggested that maybe we could include that. And I was kind of frightened because I did not know what I really would be painting. But it all worked out. And I did make paintings about the water. And this really shows you how my process changed. Here I am painting in a totally different way with a totally different medium. I'm using acrylics and I'm using them in a very watered down way. And I have a little video that I can show you that was part of a movers and makers show for PBS that was done in 2018. And part was done by a wonderful collaborator of mine, Katie Suppley, who graduated from University of the Arts last year and is just going gangbusters. And she was filming me here. And this, I guess, was the best way to show process, right, Laura? I mean, there it is right in front of you. Now, this is the movers and makers clip that we put in there. And this really catches exactly what I was doing. That element there is a compressor. And the compressor would allow me to wash the paint. You see the air is going across there. And it just seemed so logical that I was able to use this watery material for a watery show. Everything kind of worked, you know, it all worked together. So, and these are some of my sources, and sometimes I would literally put these into the paintings. This is a print that I put on top. This is a very large piece, 56 feet, and it will be, as Laura mentioned, it will be installed at the American Museum next fall. I think we have a few more shots. Now Katie came back recently, and I asked her just with her camera if she could just shoot a little bit. And so I'm bringing you right up to date. The other stuff was 2018, 19, and here we are, I guess maybe 2 months ago. These are little studies that I'm doing because I'm attempting to make a painting that's 96 by 180. And we're putting these paintings together. And it's a little daunting, but I have a big space, and the curators said, you know, Diane, we want you to make big paintings. So I said, okay, I do make big paintings, but this will be even bigger. So these are what you're seeing are just like little experiments, little kind of ways of playing with different paint and also raising the surface a little. So that gives you a bit of an inkling of my process. And here are some stills about, you know, the studio, as I said, in 2019, and that series in work. And you see, maybe I should explain that that side is all about glaciers, and you see the glacier map there in the middle, and that's how it all started. And then once I started doing those, I realized, well, over here you can see that's a map of all the reefs of the world, and that's basically what the painting was about. So here we are in July 2019, August 2019. And you might recall there was a lot of heat at that time. And I am about climate change. So clearly I was worried about this, and I have good friends who live in France. But aside from all that happening, we of course had those horrible fires in Australia with millions of animals destroyed. So I like maps, as you can tell, and I decided to make a painting of that map. But then I realized it's too boring. It was just the map. So I put it away. And I started doing this one of Australia, matching it with that as a diptych. And then I pulled the painting out again, and I realized, gee, if I turn it vertically, it's 84 inches, and those two squares are 42 by 42, I can do something else. And so this painting grew, and there it is in February. I call it Summer Heat. Now you might have noticed on the wall, whoops, I'm catching, on that wall is this one. After I did Summer Heat, I thought I was finished with the painting to the right of it, which is called Coral Triangle. Oh, and it's what's right behind me now where I'm sitting. But Summer Heat was so powerful, I thought Coral Triangle was too calm. So what I did is I added another panel to it, and that makes it, for me, more important. And it's also the first painting where I've ever actually added text. Now the Corona influence. So we are in lockdown, and I had to respond to it. I didn't know I would, but you know, you respond to what's around you if you're an artist who's awake. And there I am. I'm using a map. When I first did the map, it was just, I had all these canvases again that were all 42. So I started trying to piece them together. And originally the two squares were going to come together by themselves and be a map of America. You can tell this is when, remember, things were really bad in Washington and in California, and of course in New York. But that looked too, again, literal. So I put the one in the middle of it, and the painting, you know, just evolved. As you can see, it changed. See, First it was like that, and then it became that in May. And here's a shot of the studio in June. July, I started doing more work, lots more studies, and that's that painting finished. You might have seen it earlier without the drawing of the virus in it. Again, if I speak about process, I hated all the virus images. They were just too geometric for me. But I found this one and it really, I liked it, but I didn't know how I was going to superimpose it. And I decided, I'm not going to paint it on. I actually used charcoal and I drew it in. And then of course I fixed it. Here's August. And I found another 50 by 88 inch panel that I had. And I realized it could go with my show. So now the curators want this in the show as well. And I call this COVID spread. There are some close-ups of that. So I mentioned that I was attempting to do this big piece. So there's the beginning of it. And that is, well, no, actually that's still COVID spread. Here we go. And here we have the beginning of this big piece. So that's the beginning. And I'm just going to show you a series of process paintings, how it's evolving. It's gotten about that far. Actually, it's a little bit more further along. But here is another studio shot where you can see the studies and how these little panels here are the same proportion. And I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to make things work. So there are those. I did one about San Francisco. The one that you're seeing on the sawhorse has been changed since then, but I can't be that up to date. This is very up to date. So what happened is I started working on the panels and then I realized that I had one 60 by 60 inch stretch canvas still, waiting for me. And I realized that the square that I was isolating was also 60 by 60. So I came up with the idea that maybe I could even extend this further. I know what wall the curators want to put it on. And I started making a series of 60 by 60 paintings. And they're very graphic. I'm not sure they're finished yet. And Katie was by the other day. So she did another little clip that just shows those in the background. In my beginning, I have begun working on the 96 panels already, but I don't think I have much. But there you go. That's, again, process. You wet the canvas, I move it around, and that's what so far I have. And again, I'm not sure about these three, but I kind of like how stark they are in terms of message. I had a friend visiting recently, masked, of course, and I said, well, can you tell what it was? And it took them a minute, and she said, oh, well, that's, South America. And then she realized that's the Amazon. So that's the Amazon. That's about the Arctic and the Antarctic. And way back there, that's changed since that shot, but that's about the fires on the west, the forest fires. So I think I'm just about done and we have some time for responses.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Diane.
Very welcome.
It's great to have this walk through all your past studio spaces. You've really gotten around town in terms of where you've worked. So it's great to see.
I've never done a talk like this. That's why I actually reached out to friends. I said, this is going to be a different kind of talk.
No, it's fun. And it seems like some of people watching right now have seen some of those spaces too. So it's probably a trip down memory lane for others.
I think it might be for some people, for sure.
Yeah. I'm curious, so because you have been looking a lot at COVID-19 and the spread of COVID-19 in your work, how you see that as interrelated with climate change? Or do you see those things as connected? Oh,
totally connected, Laura. I mean, because let's be real. The phrase, we're all in this together when it comes to the pandemic. Well, guess what? We're all in this together when it comes to climate change. And it's all global. And actually, that was one of the reasons I grabbed onto it. It made so much sense to me. I've been to all these lectures and conferences about the Arctic, and they always had this joke, what happens in the Arctic doesn't stay in the Arctic. Well, guess what? What happens in China or Italy doesn't stay there either. And the sooner people understand the interconnectivity geographically, environmentally, socially, of everything in our world, that's the only thing that's going to save us. So yes, it's a direct connection.
Mm-hmm. I like that message a lot because, of course, as you know, we're all, it's very state focused, our response right now. But virus and environmental change, forest fires, they don't follow state boundaries. It's all kind of bleeds over. I have a question here from Andrea Krupp, who wants to know if you're reading anything that's particularly inspiring or relevant to your work.
That's a good question. And hi, Andrea. Thank you for that question. It sounds like the kind of question Angie would ask. The deep thinker. Not reading. I have a whole pile of books that I want to read. And I'm not looking forward to the lockdown again, but I am looking forward to sitting in front of a fire and reading all those books. I've been basically totally involved in political reading and, the Washington Post and things like that. But I did revisit a book about Alexander von Humboldt. He is inspiring. So that's the most recent thing I've been looking at.
Was it Andrea Wolf's book?
Yes.
Or yeah, mm-hmm. She's a great writer. Yeah.
She's working on another one now, I understand, that's about the whole era and the other people that he, interacted with. So it should be good.
Oh, that sounds great. A question about whether the pandemic has changed your process at all. And I had that question too. Has it affected the way that you work, not just your subject matter, but the way,
Well, it's affected
your work.
It's affected my pace. And that in the most, because I have been very involved in making these talks, which gives me structure. And it also, I go back and forth from the studio. It really is wonderful having a studio in my home. I mean, Richard was right, because I visited a lot and I think more about the work. Clearly you can see in the planning, there's a lot of, I don't know if you'd call it tentativeness, but there's a lot of kind of play actually that's going on. And I'm not that worried. I actually don't have to be worried about making art because this show has already picked these curators, they keep looking at new work. Oh, we got to put that in too, but there's plenty of work. So it's all about discovery and experimentation. And if anything, it's made me more thoughtful. And I think the other thing that the pandemic has done for me is it's connected me back to our property in Bucks County. So I'm out there near you, Laura, at least 3 to 4 days a week. I'll be going out tomorrow and staying through Monday night or Tuesday.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like you and Richard are creating land art on your property.
Oh, totally. Yes. Yeah. Gotta come. Yes. All your Instagram followers know what we're up to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been wonderful.
Pretty amazing.
Richard's done incredible things out there. And I've gotten back to planting, we just actually picked up winter berries. We just got 3 winter berries from Rutgers yesterday that are, and we lost a major tree. If you've been following me, we lost a
storms.
But yeah, red oak. So, but we're, picking up and doing other stuff. Yeah.
I have a few more questions coming in the chat. So a question about the Amazon painting that you showed with the Amazon in South America in the center. What is the focus of that painting?
That's the focus.
That's the focus, the rainforest.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, it's all about climate change. So, clearly, like I said, I'm not sure, where these paintings are going, but I kind of like how graphic they are right now. And they're very different from the expressionist kind of work that I'm playing with the other big ones. So I think the idea I have in my head is that you're going to have this, and I know how it's kind of sort of going to move. I can't show it to you now, but it's in my head. And it's going to be original on the bottom. It's going to be going up to that sky, and then other things are going to happen. And then you have these very stark facts. The Amazon is burning. The Arctic and the Antarctic are melting, and the forests are going up in smoke. So that's basically it. But I'm not going to say that clearly. So, and they should be beautiful paintings to look at. I mean, clearly, you know, I'm spending time, and I like what I see, and surfaces are, it's very subtle, but there are surfaces in the paintings.
Great. A question from Alana Quinn. Could you tell us a bit about the painting behind you? Is it from the Coral Reef series?
Well, that's Alana Quinn, the curator. Yeah. Hi, Alana. Well, I showed that in my talk. I don't know if I can move this. It's
right. Oh, that's the yes.
Yeah, there it is. So that's what it is. It's on my website. It's called Coral Triangle, and it has three-dimensional pieces in it. So right there.
Oh yeah, pieces of coral, right? Is that?
Yeah. And I'm sitting in my Zoom space. Usually I'm up in my office having meetings, but I felt that I needed to come down here and be more formal, and it's a nice background.
And so in some people here may know that in Rising Tides, a lot of your work, and I apologize because you might be able to hear my kids getting ready for bed in the background, but in Rising Tides, a lot of your work involves crackle paste, this material that you've been using to add texture to your work. Are you using that in some of your current paintings as well? Is it being used in the coral painting behind you?
No, not at all. And I think it goes back to the idea of when I started pouring the waterly paint. I think that, you know, the medium and the message, all that stuff has to come together. And clearly the crackle was the perfect material to speak about the cracking ice. And I can't use it here, but I am using gritty glass beads and a lot of other stuff in these paintings. So I've definitely become more three-dimensional and tactile in a lot of this work in a very different way than I used to in the painterly way of, you know, a Giverny kind of strokey way. But no, the crackle is no longer part of my oeuvre.
We got a few more questions. So do many of your works become books to convey the narrative to a greater extent? Or how do you convey the narrative behind your work in other ways besides just the visual? I think is the question.
I rely on people like you and Alana and Paola, who's in the audience. All you guys have to talk about it. But I don't just mean in books. But, you know, I do believe in museums. I believe in museum exhibitions that bring the public in and allow them to maybe spend a moment or two not doing a selfie, but looking at the work and maybe looking at a text on the wall. And I don't mean a little label text, but, you know, there are ways of giving messages on walls that are really can bring you in just with a sentence or two. So, and also, going back to the idea of an exhibition, it's cumulative. If someone walks from one piece to another piece to another piece, they eventually get it. And I think an exhibition has, if it's hung well and it's staged well, it has the possibility of bringing you in a space and an idea at the same time. So that's part of the message. And of course, you know, I've only showed you studio work, but I now make lenticulars, and I just finished a video about ice. So there are other ways, you know, that actually in this show, we're also going to have this coming up show. We've created a scroll that'll be on, you know, a large screen that's going to show you headlines, newspaper headlines about climate change, starting in 1988 when James Hansen first went to Congress and said, hey guys, there's such a thing as climate change. I mean, to the public. So there are lots of ways that, and it all comes together. So someone's going to see an abstract painting, but in another space, they're going to see this scroll, in another space, something else. So whoops, it all has, you know, ways of contributing, hopefully.
That's great.
Well,
yeah, I would recommend your website too for people who want to find out more about your work, and that you do a great job using your website to convey information about you and your practice too. So that's a good
I have to
spot
give
for that.
credit to my studio assistant, Alana, that does that.
She's done a great job. How does color communicate climate change in your work, or how do you use color in your work?
Any way I want. Well, clearly, you know, with the heat paintings, clearly the red was very important. Sometimes it's stark. The one behind me is kind of soft in a way. And that's why I needed that part, you know, that you can see, can't see it.
It's a contrast.
That has the black and that has that. So color, the amounts of color, texture, all those things matter to me. I know people call me a political artist or an environmental artist, and I am, but you know, beauty is very important to me. I believe in aesthetics. I believe in the formal qualities. I mean, a painting has to work. A piece of art has to work. It just can't be a message. If it's a message, write a book, you know, or a newspaper article. It has to be everything. So therefore, you have to read it on many levels.
Does your environmental activism impact your choice of materials at all? Do you think about that when creating art?
I do think about it, and I confess that it should, and it has not. I've been, you know, I mean, I'm careful. When I was an oil painter, I certainly was careful about not putting things down a drain and knowing how to remove the sludge. But I'm using acrylic, and acrylic is plastic, so not so perfect, you know. I mean, I have artist friends in the environmental movement that are really grinding, you know, stuff from the earth, and I admire what they're doing, but I don't know. I don't think I can start that now at this point in my development. So my hat's off to them, and I try to do what I can in my own way. And, you know, people sometimes will also challenge me and say, well, you know, you've been to the Arctic and the Antarctic, and what about that carbon footprint? And that's a challenge as well. And of course, my answer is, well, I'm using it in a purpose to. But then my other comeback is I haven't eaten meat in 45 years. So that's, you know, my way. But clearly, all the little ways that we deal with climate change are not enough. You have to vote for people like Biden, or, you know, endorse the Green New Deal. You have to be really active, and you have to vote. You know, that's the way policy is changed. My job is to awaken people to want to go out and vote, change policy, and be aware that our planet is in trouble.
That's a great answer. We have a few more minutes if anyone wants to enter in any more questions in the chat. I have another one. So this is something I think about a lot as an art historian. So once a colleague of mine told me that when she writes, she always imagines she's trying to convince her toughest critic in her writing. And I was wondering if you think about that at all when you're creating your artwork. Are you thinking, do you have a certain audience in mind when you're creating your pieces? Are you trying to convince or trying to amplify, I guess, messages?
I think I'm trying to seduce. I'm trying.
That's good. Yeah. Bring people in so they look closer and then see the message.
I also want to share the joy. I mean, clearly I love what I do. You know, there's a joy in making this stuff, and it's a habit. And you know, I just read an article on flow, and I actually have met Chickson Mahali. We called him Chick. The guy who wrote the book, because he was in Bellagio with me. And, you know, talk about flow as a way to cope with all the crap that's going on now in terms of our world. And, you know, artists are always into flow. I mean, you get a high every now and then just by being in the moment. And I enjoy that. And sometimes I really enjoy what I've done. Not all the time. I make a lot of mistakes. But if it's work that I really appreciate, I do want other people to appreciate it, but, you know, it's up to them.
All right. Well, any final thoughts you want to leave us with, Diane? Thank you for a great tour of your studio and practice.
Well, I want to thank all
Everyone says thank you in the chat. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, can we see everybody now? Can't they Can't we put everyone up? We used to do.
Yeah, if anyone wants to put themselves on video and wave hello. I know a lot of you are friends with Diane and friends at the museum.
Yes. Oh, Maya, hi. So yeah, they're friends I haven't seen in a really long time.
There you go.
Wow.
Matt, do you have any final sign-off words?
Me? No, maybe.
Oh, Matt, I said Matt. Or you, Diane, if you want to say anything else either.
I've spoken. There's Elisa. I'm just seeing people I didn't know were here. So hi, everybody. Wow, I have to read. It's hard to find all the names. Alana, yes. George, oh, from Vermont. Kathy from Connecticut. Maya from New York. This is wonderful. Oh, I'm so pleased that I did send out a letter because I thought this was a different kind of talk than I usually give. Right? Were you expecting it, Paula? It was a little different for you, I bet. Oh, and there's Sandy. She made it. Sandy Dean got on. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Laura. And thank you, everyone, for joining us here tonight. A couple of reminders. We did record this event. If you want to rewatch it or send it to someone who couldn't make it tonight, it will be posted to the Michener's YouTube page probably within a week or so. And lastly, come see the show. As long as the museum's open, the show will be up. And also, please check out our other virtual programs that we do have in conjunction with the Rising Tides exhibition. Other than that, again, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Diane. Until we see each other again on the internet, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay arty, everyone.